And here we go. So, spawning in the south of the map, playing in blue, we've got ZertoN playing as the Mongols, and spawning in the north of the map in red, we have Mixu playing the Mongols. So my first thing to point out here, quite interesting, neither player wanting to ban the Mongols, which is quite surprising because we've seen a lot of Mongol bans. Thoughts on this one?
I feel like at this point it comes down to Mongols and Rus being banned, but there is some intriguing background story behind this one because ZertoN indeed banned Rus, so Mixu can't use Rus. But Mixu banned English, so Mongols is actually an available option for ZertoN, but he decided, or excuse me, Rus is an available option for him, and he decided to go with Mongols, so he's going to have Rus available for a future game.
Is indeed very interesting. What an interesting choice there to ban the English. That's a very interesting choice. So, and I suppose sometimes get those situations where players will choose their ban based on knowing what their opponent is particularly strong with. I don't know if that's something that we've seen happen on this occasion, but I would say it's somewhat likely. You don't tend to ban English unless you know that your opponent is really, really good with the English. You'd often see players ban English against Don Arty or GUA that are known to play them, but otherwise you tend to see Rus or Mongols. So very interesting indeed. But yeah, not going to be seeing any Rus and not going to be seeing any English in this series. And after this match, not going to be seeing any of the Mongols either. So what can we expect to see from a Mongol mirror, Lidakor?
So, Mongol mirrors, I think the word that you want to use is flexibility. Mongols have the option to go up with Dark Age Presser, talk about Spearmen and Towers. They have the option to go for Scouts, as you see over here, or they have the options to sit back, play a slower game, play Professional Scouts, and go to Castle Age. So, when it comes to Mongols, it's really difficult to predict what exactly they're going for, so scouting your opponent aggressively is going to be a key factor. As you see, both players are up with a stable, so there's a chance that we're going to see a ton of scout fighting here at the beginning. Looking at the base of Mixu here real quickly, his base is spectacular. His town center covers the gold, the wood line, and of course his food. So every single bit of resource income for him is safe. The only thing that's exposed is the Ovoo, and I feel like that's the reason both of them are going for the scouts in Dark Age. They want to try and burn down the opponent's Ovoo.
Definitely very. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I don't know too much about the history of these players and how much Mongol they both play, but having both picked this on the first map, it does make sense. I think it's fair to say Mongols are the strongest civilization on this map after Rus, so going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, any early indications about what either player's done? Not quite yet. A lot of people will have ZertoN as a favorite for this match, but certainly I think one that's very close. These are two players that come up against each other quite a lot in some of the smaller events. I think this is the first time they've played in a kind of a 64 player event, so both going to be out to get each other. And so far here, have you seen any particular difference in the approach the players are taking?
Very minimal differences, I would say. They're both playing a fairly safe Dark Age here with a couple of scouts, as we do have one defensive tower up for the gold mine of ZertoN. That's the only difference between the two players. ZertoN having a much more exposed gold mine compared to his opponent. On the other hand, ZertoN's Ovoo is close to the town center, so it's difficult to burn down, unlike the one from Mixu. So Mixu is going to have to react to this one, and you see there is instantly two more scouts popping out to make sure that Ovoo doesn't get taken down. Some horsemen also
Needs to be
join the party
careful
over here.
I mean,
Yeah,
this would be. I don't think the Ovoo obviously won't go down, but it would be very significant if it was. Of course, very hard to inflict significant damage on the Mongolians with how quick they can just move away those units. So I like this play from ZertoN, putting the pressure on, making life difficult for his opponent. In the meantime, actually getting some damage in there as well. Maybe now sending out villagers to actually repair the Ovoo. So Mixu seems to be feeling the pressure here, the fact that he's needed to go out and do this. But he is managing to repel it, and just like that, the Ovoo's basically been fully repaired. So somewhat all for nothing, but at least managed to use up a bit of his opponent's attention, but gonna now retreat. Doesn't want to risk losing those sheep. So I take that scout back. Both players neither really knowing whether they want to fully commit to that engagement. A lot of toing and going, and looks like it will revert to the status quo. We've now got ZertoN aging up with the 7 villagers. Can we have a little look and see if Mixu's also... Mixu's already up to the feudal age, so he's actually pretty quickly ahead of his opponent there. That was a fast age up there comparatively.
The two players ultimately ended up doing the same thing, scouts and feudal age. The order was different. Mixu clicked up faster, but he didn't have scouts when the opponent came in, yet he was able to quickly react, and ultimately, with the speed arrow of the Khan, he's also able to get a nice surround. Luckily for ZertoN, he might be able to get away with some of those low HP scouts, which would be a bit of a disappointment for Mixu. He could have tried taking down one more of those scouts. Looks like he's going to get one over here. And with that many scouts on the battlefield, this pretty much guarantees that you want to go for professional scouts.
Absolutely. So the first diversion, now we see professional scouts now coming in from ZertoN, as correctly called by you, an expensive but very good upgrade. So be interesting to see how ZertoN uses that, and Mixu with a huge number of scouts on the field looking to do something similar.
Looks like the stable will be repositioned over here because we're going to have an outpost right next to the girl over here. So the Mongols often play professional scouts anyways, but when you have this many scouts out on the field, it's almost a must to get this upgrade, simply because otherwise you are not really benefiting from that big investment into scouts. So professional scouts, I think the good decision over here for Mixu. Whereas on the other side, we do have an increased amount of horsemen here for ZertoN, so he's looking to put up some more pressure, just now grabbing the feudal age horseman upgrade in. Wouldn't be surprised to see him attempting to burn that Ovoo down once again.
It definitely looks like ZertoN has made the decision to go slightly more aggressive and military focused than his opponent. Again, fine margins, not a huge amount in it, but definitely seems to have been somewhat of a concerted effort to be more about the pressure. In the meantime, Mixu's really not across that halfway line on the map and not really looking to exert any pressure of his own. So whether or not that works out basically depends on the extent that ZertoN can make those military units account and that pressure convert into an economic advantage. We're going to basically find that out in the coming minutes. Is your instinct that ZertoN's made enough use of those military units for them to pay off?
I don't think so. On the other hand, he didn't lose those horsemen, so he can use them a tiny bit later. Basically, the two players are doing the same thing, so I don't think that ZertoN really is set back by the fact that he added a couple more of the horsemen out here. Now, looking at the two players out here, you see we already have this second patch of huntables being brought in by ZertoN, same thing for Mixu, and now I feel like we're getting to the stage where we could see some pastures being dropped right next to Ovoos. That's exactly what ZertoN is doing. So one of the things that you can accomplish with that pasture is that you have a better sheep training on it when it's close to an Ovoo. So more and more times in Mongol gameplay are we seeing players dropping 1 or 2 early pastures, so even when they are not consuming sheep at all, it just starts stacking up. It's a relatively low investment for a decent amount of sheep at the beginning, so it basically delays you having to add 5-6 more pastures and complete the transition to that.
Very interesting. So, I mean, again, this looks like a very, very close match. You've got the 2 TCs for Mixu, which is going to be doing a lot to help out economically.
I love the second
now
center.
Yeah, I like that too. I think the pressure from ZertoN's obviously not been... Well, really, the fact that second town center's gone down basically tells you that ZertoN's pressure has somewhat failed, because Mixu felt comfortable enough to stick that down and start double production. So now it's really, really hard because ZertoN's going to have to try and find a way to respond to that. That boom is going to be really, really quick. What ZertoN's doing in the meantime is going up to Castle Age with 10 villagers. So are we seeing our first little difference in opinion there? But it looks like we are, with Mixu going for the second TC and ZertoN prioritizing his age up.
Absolutely. I kind of like both approaches, to be honest. The 2 TC is a smart choice because you can get that up pretty fast and already start leveraging the fact that your opponent is not pushing you. Whereas for Castle Age, you're looking for a power spike, likely going to see some Spearmen being mixed in here, although we are seeing double ranges. So it makes me wonder if we're going to see some Mangadai or just some crossbowmen on the field. Lancers are always an option, of course, for ZertoN as he's up to Castle Age. But the reason why I like the 2TC play a tiny bit better over here is because you see, Mixu is pretty much there to get to Castle Age as well. So he's not gonna be that much behind, yet he already has a second town center, so Mixu does have a 5 villagers lead already.
Absolutely. Now, he is also, looks like is he aging up there with a step redoubt as well? Yeah, Mixu's also getting his age up out, so aging up really only a minute behind, and with those 5 extra villagers. So definitely agree with your assessment there that he'll like his position to have those extra villagers while getting up.
ZertoN has a nice position here in the middle. This is something that will be spotted by Mixu. The biggest question, I think, for Mixu right now is going to be unit production, because all he has is a barracks and a stable that he didn't deploy, as compared to his opponent that is on 1 barracks, 2 ranges, and 1 stable. The stable isn't producing anything, but it looks like it's going to be a mixture of men-at-arms, some spearmen, some crossbows, and even some lancers. So it's just pretty much spam every single Castle Age unit you can afford right now for the ZertoN.
Absolutely, and this is something that we see a lot and it can be absolutely huge. One of the biggest potential errors in this game is lack of military production buildings, and if you manage to get a jump on your opponent and start coming in with pressure a little bit before those military production buildings are up, you can cause some really, really big problems, which is what it looks like ZertoN's trying to do. And we're not sure ZertoN has necessarily seen just how significant a gap in military production buildings is, but if he's going to do it now, that Ovoo is going to go down. That's a pretty big move there.
That's a big move. It could be a game-winning move here, because we talked about how powerful the Mongol unit spam is, but that is built upon the Ovoo, and ZertoN knows that. He pulled the deer stones all the way up here. Obviously, when he's burning down a building, he's also getting 50 food and 50 goats. There is also that benefit, but the biggest thing is that he's cutting off his opponent from double training, and you see that he already has more production buildings, and he has access to the double training, whereas his opponent now has no chance to do it. And I just feel like for Mixu, even though he has 2 town centers, lack of military could haunt him for a long, long time, because he could easily lose access to that gold mine in the next 1 or 2 minutes. Right now, he might even be forced to pull that stable to the back of his base.
Yeah, ZertoN now moving up with that go, but this is a lot of pressure now, in the battering ram coming in behind that, and you know you're in trouble. You're the one that's moving all your buildings across the map, which Mixu is now doing, being forced to move them around. That's very little HP on a couple of these buildings as well. This is a lot of pressure coming in. I think ZertoN's timed this very, very well. That battering ram presents a huge problem now for him to deal with. He's not going to be able to get villagers anywhere close to that battering ram without losing them. No scouts left to try and get in there. He's sending in a couple of hardened spearmen, or are they even hardened? Not quite sure, but losing them quite quickly as well, and this is very, very nice pressure. Although saying that, sorry, Lidakor.
I think it's very nice pressure here. ZertoN is losing some forces over here, but he's keeping his opponent off from the gold mine. He destroyed the Ovoo, he set multiple buildings on fire, and he is killing a decent amount of units here. Even if he loses some of his forces over here, he has to be happy with this, because that step redoubt was completely useless for the last 1 minute. His opponent doesn't have an Ovoo up until now. And you see there is just a bigger trickle of units coming in. And behind this one, there's a completely untouched economy for ZertoN. So despite the fact that there's a 13 villagers lead for Mixu, because of the idle time, because of the inefficiency, I don't think that's going to show. And ZertoN probably has the better economy between the 2 players, especially that food and gold income is what is worrisome for Mixu.
That battering ram is a little bit exposed, but really, really doesn't want to lose that battering ram, but I don't think he's going to.
Notice how ZertoN is playing the map control game over here. He knows that he doesn't even need to destroy buildings over here. All he needs to do is just apply pressure and cut his opponent off from certain sources of gold. And once again, he's making that step redoubt be completely useless. It's one of the best landmarks in the game to your economy. And that being completely useless because Mixu isn't able to access the gold is a massive advantage here for ZertoN.
Absolutely. Now, a couple of mangonels popping out there from Mixu. How do you feel about that? That is a huge use of resources. Is it a good use of resources?
I don't necessarily think so, simply because there isn't really a ton of archers on the field right now. There is some crossbowmen, sure thing, but I think 2 mangonels is a bit of an overkill against that. On the other hand, I also feel like ZertoN needs to mix in some archers because he's got a ton of crossbowmen, but those don't work particularly well against the spearmen. So I feel like ZertoN could use a couple more archers, and in that case, those mangonels could prove to be a little more useful. So they will work in the long run, and it looks like Mixu is going to be able to hold this one for now. Not necessarily the best decision to go for 2 mangonels, in my opinion, but it might still work out nicely.
But that step readout at Lidakor in the meantime is very low HP.
I mean the Deerstones, right?
He's... Oof. Oh, the Deerstone, sorry, apologies. The Deerstone's very, very low HP. Does manage to get away, but very close. That would have been huge if he'd lost that, but he does manage to escape with it. He is now repelling this. The men-at-arms coming with a very good siege on the battering ram.
I feel like the problem that Mixu's facing right now is that he's got no gold income, barely any food income, and as you see, the mangonels perform decently against the crossbows, but they won't work really well against lancers and men-at-arms, so this isn't a perfect response over here from Mixu. I really feel like this game is just snowballing out of control at this point, and I don't think that it is Mixu's current decisions that make it difficult. I think the problem for him is what happened to the left of his base 2 minutes ago.
I have to say one thing that I've been really impressed with in this game from ZertoN, something that I love seeing at this top level play is just the constant unrelenting pressure. Even if you've had one small military loss, keep piling in and it makes life very, very difficult for your opponent. That being said, he looks to finally have brought back his forces to take a little break. Looked like he was felt like he was losing too many here, but looking at the military situation, it looks pretty even, but of course that mangonel, you just need one great shot from that and it can cause just huge problems.
Absolutely. Notably, Mixu found himself another store mine and now he is stable, so he can start popping out Lancers. Lancers alone won't crack it though, because there is some crossbows. Lancers mangonels could work nicely though. At this point, it's still 2 town centers for him, but his villager advantage disappeared completely. So, for now, it's going to be even economies, and Mixu still doesn't have access to any kind of gold, 0 gold income.
That's absolutely huge. So, I mean, he's got a very small window to try and get back on top of some gold, and if he's not able to do that very, very soon, it's going to just be a world of problem with his inability to create high-quality military units. So, again, ZertoN keeping up that very, very good map control. That's one thing that I think ZertoN's got very much right in this game, is he's just all game looked really strong. Oh, great spring-out shot right there. Takes down one of the mangonels, and the other mangonel can only survive probably one more hit from a spring-old. Perhaps it will take 2, but really smart decision-making there from ZertoN to make them. And there, the mangonel's going to go down. It did take 2 shots, but it goes down. And now we're going to see villagers start going down, and GG gets called, and ZertoN takes game 1 with what for me was an excellent aggressive pressing performance for Lidakor.
Absolutely. The risky thing to go for 2 town centers didn't pay off for Mixu. There's a lot of mind games over here because you know that the Mongols are an aggressive civilization, yet Mixu, I felt like he tried to think out of the box and just say, okay, I don't think ZertoN is going to put up much pressure to me. He might just go Castle Age, and I think that Mixu felt confident he can get to Castle Age and build up his numbers before ZertoN arrives, but that wasn't the case, and ultimately, ZertoN had the military advantage for the majority of the game, and he just kept pushing Mixu's base. Mixu loses the Ovoo. Obviously, every single building set on fire helps with ZertoN push as well, because ZertoN is getting gold and food from it. But most importantly, Mixu was cut off from gold. Maybe if he used that second town center on that gold mine instead of placing it on the trees, that could have been reasonable.